Holy cow, this was one of the hardest things I have ever done. Beating every single Donkey Kong Country game didn't sound like it was going to be too hard at the start, but the more I got into it, and once I got to Donkey Kong Country 2, I knew I was in for a goddamn doozy.
Jesus Christ!
Okay. Ah! So let me take you through one of the most iconic and hardest franchises of Nintendo's entire history in honor of Donkey Kong Bonanza coming out in like a couple weeks. So I went into this challenge about a year ago at this point, not realizing the toll these games were about to take on me. Listen, they're all amazing games to a degree, but this was definitely one of the hardest gaming challenges I've done ever. But it was also one of the most rewarding. You see, I played every single one of these games as close as I could to the original experience. Now, in all fairness, I don't really have an SNES and have zero plans of spending hundreds of dollars to play these titles, so I just used Nintendo Switch Online SNES service, and honestly, it was a pretty great time. I didn't use any save states, and I only saved when the game itself allowed me to, so I don't want to hear any crap, because I beat this fair and square like y'all did back in the day in the damn 80s, in the prehistoric era. If you don't believe me, I have a whole library of the live streams up on my channel that you can go watch at any point, after this video, of course. But with all that out of the way, let's get into my journey through Donkey Kong Country, a franchise that transformed me as a person. A lot of personal growth, I think. I also went to therapy around this time, so maybe that's what it is. On February 28th, I did my first ever stream of the original Donkey Kong Country game on the SNES. This is a game I had played before, albeit not in its entirety. You see, going into this first one, I was pretty confident. My platforming skills were pretty decent, and this was a game that I had already played to some degree, so at a certain point, a little bit of muscle memory I thought would kick in. Now, this first title, the importance of it cannot be understated. Like, due to this, we got the entire rest of the trilogy, and then the Wii throwbacks and the Wii U masterpiece, so it really laid the blueprint for what the series would be going forward. For an SNES game, it also was breathtaking. It utilized 3D sprites and really just allowed them to show off the capability of the SNES in a whole new way. I mean, I said it in my year-old review of this game, but genuinely this game looks better than the N64 title by every single margin. It's simply because of how nice the SNES graphical style still holds up to this day, in my opinion. This game was challenging when it needed to be, but without being overly punishing. I feel that this one probably struck the best balance between the original three as to like challenge and reward. Like when I got through a particularly tough level, I felt really good about it. And then when I finally overcame a difficult section, I was proud because before that I was, being humbled and having to go back and redo 3 levels all over again. But the hitboxes here are sort of off, and the slipperiness of DK was obnoxious at certain points, especially when controlling the animal buddies. But for the first rendition of this series, and essentially a complete remake of the character of DK as well, this was a damn masterpiece. Altogether, this was about an 8-hour experience with a lot of fun, variety, and clever level design. The boss battles, while easy, were sort of a breath of fresh air after completing some death-defying levels prior without an opportunity to save, so I didn't really mind the lack of challenge there. I originally gave this an 8.7 out of 10, which I think is pretty fair, but after going back and experiencing the entire franchise, I realized that this game is truly very special. Yes, did the future games improve on elements like the controls, bosses, and different mechanics? Sure, but the minecart levels were born here. The tough as nails but fun platforming was created. The love I have for this original game and the ability and desire I have to go back to it constantly makes me like the game even more than I initially did, I think. And so with my revised perspective, I'm gonna give Donkey Kong Country a 9 out of 10. It's still not a perfect game, of course, but no first entry of a series really is, but it's a damn fun game from start to finish and an experience I really want to go back to and replay. So in short, I loved that original title, but let's go on to a more controversial game, Donkey Kong Country 2. Now, it's not that controversial online. Everybody seems to absolutely adore it, but when I made my initial video, I did have some complaints. I talked about how much of a great game it is because I do genuinely love it a lot, but I have some issues with it, and people couldn't seem to stomach that. Even though I ended up rating it higher than the original game, while still bringing in my problems. I feel like the more you love a game, the more you see its flaws, usually, so that was the case for me. So, Donkey Kong Country 2 and I are an interesting story because I went into this title absolutely blind, other than, of course, like hearing it hyped up to all oblivion all over the internet. I went in with pretty high expectations because of that, and Donkey Kong Country 2 was just fucking brutal. This is the hardest game in the entire franchise, in my opinion, including the later two. This game, while being in similar length to the last title, took me more than double the time. I mean, I spent over 20 hours dying again and again in this game, and it wasn't pretty. I'm surprised my chair is still in one piece, to be honest. Okay. Ah! But starting off this game, I was initially very thrown off by how vertical the levels became. In the last title, everything was very side-scrollery, like, I never really focused too much on vertical platforming, but here this seemed to be what DKC2 was pretty much all about. I did end up easily adapting to the change in platforming styles, but what I truly wasn't ready for was how much the bosses themselves were amped up. I mean, the very first boss, Crow, took me a while to get his pattern down, and to be honest, it scared me to know that this was only the beginning of what was looking to be a very difficult game. The second world proved my hypothesis more than correct, throwing us straight into Red Hot Ride, a level that really just changed up the flow of the game. This is literally a whole new level of mechanics where we're forced to learn out of the blue. It's a pretty cool way to keep the platforming engaging though, so I do appreciate when these types of games do that thing. But this game also really relies on the animal buddies in a whole new way because instead of utilizing them for special levels once in a while like in the original, they are an entire thing here in many ways. Playing as the parrot guy was fucking brutal. I mean, you could shoot stuff at enemies, but you also needed to master basically a wholly different moveset. And again, the way it changed up everything I had previously known was absolutely brutal. The saving situation here was also very similar to the first game, except now you have to pay for every save after the first one. It was brutal, again, because sometimes I just needed Granny to take a little bit of pity on me, and she would never fucking do that. However, I did figure out in late game how to cheese the system a bit, and once I knew how to sweet talk Granny, the frustration of redoing the last 4 levels and boss fights subsided. And thank God, because this game really kicks it up to 11 at a certain point. Also, side note, if you want to know anything specifically in depth about these games, I have full videos on each and every one of them that you can find on my channel. Subscribe to it and check it out. Don't leave the video though. Between the crow, the snake, and the spider, I was fucking sick of all of the animals in this game. They all played so differently with completely new level structures as well, and it really just put my skills to the test. I mean, most of the spider levels took me around 10 or so tries, and I didn't even realize the snake had more abilities than just sort of jumping higher. It took my chat telling me to hold the jump button to make the snake soar through the damn sky. Then, of course, with no break, basically, I was sent into this hellish maze barrel level that took me dying for about an hour, then quitting stream, then coming back 2 weeks later to finally beat it. And surprisingly, when I came back, I absolutely mogged it, and it somehow only took me like 15 minutes. But then it took me 2 hours to get through the honey levels, and then after a bit into these vine levels, it took all of my just newfound momentum right away. And bramble fucking scramble, you guys. This one killed me. Then we see Sonic for some reason, and then another 40-minute honey level and wild boss fights as the bird. As we get further along in this game, each level started taking around 45 minutes just to get through, and with how many times I had to redo levels after finally finishing them, I got extraordinarily frustrated. But at a certain point, and after literal hours of practice, I seemed to get a lot better at the game, until of course the spider levels came up once again, because Web Woods was the absolute death of me. For an hour and a half, I tried and tried again, and at every turn an enemy swooped in or came after me out of absolutely nowhere, and with how iffy my spider skills were, I just had to call it quits, and I unfortunately walked away from the level extremely defeated. This is the time where we remember, chat, that I am just a girl, and that was a joke. Go! Just fucking run. Just run. Oh! Yikes! What happened? What? I don't even know how that happened. That's so fucking crazy! Fucking awesome. Thank God I died there. Fucking Jesus Christ. Ah! Just fucking hit him. Jesus Christ. Oh, this is fucking idiotic. Ah! Ah! I hate this game.
game. That's fucking bullshit, Chad. That's so crazy. I'm actually livid, you know?
I eventually came back to it and beat it, but this level itself ended up adding a solid 2.5 hours to my overall playtime. So to say I was over it is a bit of an understatement. Now the last stretch of the levels here was brutal, and after that BS of Web Woods, I was just exhausted. Just the focus I had to have here was absolutely insane. Also, one of the last levels has you basically playing as every single animal buddy, and holy shit, this was frustrating.
We don't need it, you know? Fuck, dude, fuck. Ugh!
And then it was on to the boss fights, and King K. Rool was genuinely insane, to say the least. I came extremely close a couple times, but after ending stream and coming back a few hours later, I finally sealed the deal and was done.
Men ain't shit, Chad. That's what that just taught me.
But holy shit, you guys, this game was genuinely an emotional roller coaster. The highs were extremely high because once you overcome all of those challenges, you feel on top of the world, but then it knocks you right back down to earth because you have to do it all over again for the following levels. I think I had a pretty good time with this game.
Come on.
No way.
No way. Let's fucking go.
Until like the last 5 to 6 levels where each individual one was taking me like an hour or over that, and it just became so frustrating at a certain point that I was pretty sick of it. Like it felt like I watch people play playthroughs of Elden Ring, and that frustration and the yelling that you feel is crazy. Like it doesn't make it a bad game, obviously, it's a great game. But the emotional roller coaster you are going through, I mean, it's brutal at some points. But yeah, then once you beat it, like the high of beating it is nearly intoxicating. So it's tough because you go in and out of loving and hating this game constantly. And for me, like I ended up really enjoying this game, but if you watch my playthroughs, it looks like I hate it. And I even say that I don't like it a few times, but I do like it. It's just like a love-hate relationship, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, the game world was done really wonderfully, the gameplay was always kept fresh and new, and the challenge added, honestly, a lot. It made me feel a sense of accomplishment that I honestly have yet to feel in any other game since. I mean, like I said, this emotional roller coaster it puts you through is absolutely insane, but no part of me wants to play this game again, at least not anytime soon. It's a game that for a one and done playthrough is magnificent, but it was so genuinely crazy in every sense of the word. I've never ever felt frustration like that. Maybe other than when I was 12 playing Tropical Freeze, but we'll get to that masterpiece in just a little bit. So on to Donkey Kong Country 3, the black sheep of the franchise. I mean, this franchise is obviously one of the highest quality things ever created, so every fucking game is beautifully put together and thought out. And every aspect of the last game that could have been improved with a future rendition always was. So now I ask you, what was one of the worst things about Donkey Kong Country 2? They assumed here that it was the challenge. Because while yeah, it was rewarding for the players who pushed through, I think Nintendo realized that the Kaizo BS that they put players through with the last game was a bit much, so Donkey Kong 3 was a bit more of a relaxed game by comparison. And honestly, this was exactly what I needed in the moment. I mean, think about playing all these back to back, with barely any other type of game in between. Honestly, another Donkey Kong Country 2 type game would have eaten me alive and probably took me another 3 months to get through, so while yes, this wasn't as rewarding or memorable as the previous one, it was exactly what I wanted. Donkey Kong Country 3 felt really good to play, and it looked good. This game harkened back to Donkey Kong Country 1 in a lot of ways, by taking the difficulty back down to something a bit more reasonable. However, something it sucked at was the characters. In this game, you play as Dixie Kong trying to save Diddy and DK, but she's got her little baby cousin guy with her. I honestly don't really know the lore there, but it's Kiddy Kong. He's a baby, he's slow as hell, and when you're not deliberately moving with him, he just sits down, which is a small thing, but it literally destroys your momentum. He throws barrels better than Dixie, but honestly, I was almost entirely a Dixie main, at least as much as I could, in this game because of how much I genuinely hated playing as this little guy. Now, the levels were pretty balanced between going from horizontal focus to vertical, and I think it had a really nice blend of the two styles. They also constantly switched it up with new types of levels, like a toboggan level harkening back to the minecarts, and then the underwater levels, which I was never too much of a fan of, but they give you the swordfish homie and he makes these levels much more bearable than they are without him, of course. The reliance on the animal buddies here was also taken down a notch, thank God, because I was pretty tired of them after Donkey Kong Country 2, and here, since they're used more sparingly, it was actually kind of fun, and like a nice change of pace to play as them. The hub world was also a nice addition as well because it allows you to more freely roam through the older levels. It also allows you to save after every single level, which means that going through 4 of the most challenging levels only to die like an inch away from the goal and all the cheap deaths of the first 2 was finally over with. Thank the fucking maker, chat. The boss battles were extremely creative and a huge step up from the previous 2. Donkey Kong Country didn't have super great boss battles whatsoever, but they were simple and pretty easy. And then Donkey Kong Country 2 had extraordinarily challenging bosses, but here they kind of just married the two while adding a bunch of creativity and just like newness, which was really fun and refreshing. You play as the elephant in one and hit the hell out of the waterfall's eyes, and then you have to like throw the bugs in the barrel at the right time to keep him back and fall and get him all the way off the ledge. I mean, it was different and fun and just creative. And this game is like definitely a more forgotten one. It came out on the SNES after the N64 was already out, so I think that took a lot of the wind out of its sails, but this is still a very fun title and a refreshing one at that. Especially in the way that I played them back to back, you know, it's just nice to not spend literal hours on each and every level again, so something a bit more breezy was absolutely welcome. I said this in my review, but like if you want to play more Donkey Kong and have already played both 1 and 2, this is an awesome additive experience. However, standalone, it's definitely not as impactful as the original 2. But don't take that as me saying that it's not a good game, because it is, and frankly, I'd sooner go back to it than I would Donkey Kong Country 2. Again, I have a specific review of it that you can go check out after this video, but let's go on to the Donkey Kong Country games that I personally grew up with, because this, I think, is where it got really interesting. Donkey Kong Country Returns. It made me fall in love with the character as a child, and I honestly remember playing the game all the time with my dad and absolutely adoring it. However, when returning to the game for the first time in like 13 or so years, I was floored by the difficulty here. I didn't remember this game being as brutal as it was, but the beautiful thing here was that Donkey Kong Country 3 was a fantastic little break in the bone-breaking intensity of the last few, so I was feeling ready to take on a challenge yet again. So let's get into Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii. This game is tough, and it takes us back to the difficulty and cheap deaths almost of Donkey Kong Country 2. However, now you automatically save after every single level, so there's no more painstaking backtracking. So this game was essentially just a return to form for what the Donkey Kong Country franchise was, because at this point, we had seen 2 whole console generations without a traditional Donkey Kong game. Obviously, we got Donkey Kong Country 64 for whatever reason, and then Donkey Konga on the GameCube, which is like cool and kind of fun, but we're back, you know? It's time to get for real now, and it really was beautiful. Because he's back to his 2D platforming glory, and it was amazing. However, I will say this game isn't really super special, all things considered. The graphics are just okay, they're not really the absolute best, and then the movement and stuff is very tried and true, except you're back to playing as Donkey Kong, and now you have Diddy as a power-up, basically. This was a great upgrade, but again, it just felt expected, I guess. Now, the silhouette levels here were also really cool and a great idea, but just because of the Wii graphics, I can't really help but feel that it's somewhat held back. Donkey Kong Country Returns as a whole is a brutal game that's a fun romp in the franchise, but when you put it against the other titles in the franchise, it seems pretty vanilla. It's fun, but yeah, just a great return to form with a lot of cool ideas that were underutilized. However, many of those ideas were fully brought to the forefront in Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, the latest Donkey Kong game that came out in 2014 on the Wii U, and Tropical Freeze just took everything that Returns tried to do and just fucking did it to a whole other level. I mean, the graphics were beautiful, and at the time, we were finally able to see Donkey Kong in HD. And even with the port on the Nintendo Switch, it looks sexy as hell. We then expanded on all the Donkey Kong buddies, because not only did we have Diddy here, but now you can play as Cranky Kong, who can bounce on spikes and do all sorts of fun and frantic shit. Then you have the return of Dixie Kong, and she is fucking perfect. This is absolutely the best Kong power-up within any game ever. She is a hover similar to Diddy's, but with this upward momentum at the end, and it goes a long way. She fucks. The way the Kong himself moves also feels very similar to the last few titles, but it's just a completely refined version of Donkey Kong Country Returns. Every idea they had in those games is finally realized in this one, you know? The platforming and environments were so well done and interesting to look around. The fall area was beautiful, the silhouette levels were finally realized, the bosses were insane, and the difficulty was not taken down at all. Now in my streams of these games, this was really the only one that I didn't struggle with at all. However, this is because I love this game so much that I've already beaten it like 5 times and 100%ed it before. So while the gameplay is gonna look really sexy here, this game is very much still difficult, I think, for people who aren't as sweaty at this game as someone like me. But the variety of things to do here is godly. Each level has something new to make it feel fresh, and you're constantly jumping between minecart levels, rocket barrows, silhouette, water, and just everything it throws at you constantly keeps things fresh. I honestly really even enjoyed the water levels, to a certain extent, of course. And a while ago, I gave the game a 10 out of 10 in my original review, and I've never felt more confident to stick with a rating because it was and still is one of the best gaming experiences out there. The Switch 2 is backwards compatible, as we all know, so while we wait just a little bit longer for Donkey Kong Bonanza, make sure you go back and check out Tropical Freeze, because it high-key fucks. This entire experience of beating every single Donkey Kong Country game was beautiful, and I genuinely fell further in love with the franchise. Since beating Tropical Freeze at 13, I had been wanting to experience all this franchise had, so thanks for being there, and with the streams and everything, and get me through that experience. So as a whole, the franchise of Donkey Kong Country has gone through a lot of changes. It is very different from that initial game, but the blueprint of what was there is still carried through these newer titles, and I think that's really special because they hit something really well in those original few games. You can also see that they're constantly experimenting with new mechanics and ideas and stuff like that, and it all just leads into every game being pretty much better than the last, aside from, you know, a couple small changes, like some things with Donkey Kong Country 3. But if I were to pick my absolute favorite, I'm still gonna say it's gotta be Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, probably due to nostalgia in part, but also I think that game really just elevates the Donkey Kong experience to a whole other level. You know what I mean? That original trilogy is beautiful though, and if you've only played the recent stuff, I implore you to go back and try those out. They are available on Nintendo Switch 2 and the original Nintendo Switch on the Switch online service for SNES, so check them out, see what you think, because I fucking love this franchise, and I was so happy to finally play all of these games. I really enjoyed that chapter of streaming, and we're gonna bring it all back when Bonanza comes out very soon. So thank you guys for being here. If you liked the video, drop it a like, subscribe to the channel, check out this one. It's a banger, it's a vibe, it's a good time. I will see you guys over there, and I hope you guys enjoyed me finally going through every single Donkey Kong Country game, because I had a ton of fun. Do you guys like the cosplay? Do I look like Donkey Kong? Wait, check me out. What does he do? Oh, he dabs.